So here's the thing. We did not monetize our videos. That means that everything from attracting viewers to our videos to making money off of them is left up to us.
Why don't you do us a favor and tell your friends and family about our channel, cause we're sure that they know someone that will love our content.
And since you're here, make sure you buy us a coffee at the link below. Each coffee donates $3 to this channel, and all the money donated will go towards content content off of this channel.
Also on our Ko-fi page, check out our shop where you can watch the unedited versions of commercial breaks and buy cool merchandise we made ourselves. Mostly.
And if that's not enough, what if we told you that those who gave to the channel will get a mention at the end of each video? So visit the link below and help support this channel through the power of a cup of coffee.
And to those already donating, thank you for supporting the channel. And with that, let's begin.
You know that Czech-based know before a lot. But now need another virtual band, but in a really unlikely place. This is a story of one set virtual band to college girls at graduation. To their rise to the top of the European musical scene. The only program on BBC. Here now is Kristen, who asked for us to fight but when mentioned college girls, Kristen.
Right, so this is the story of Natalie and Erica Martinova, twin sisters attending college in the Czech city of Prague. After a year of putting up with overbearing peers and professors and constantly living with the fear of making fools of themselves, the two decided enough was enough and dropped out to put on art exhibitions. Their exhibitions have been described as avant-garde, strange, and innovative. The exhibition's features have ranged from simple paintings made by Anthony and Holly Erica from both sisters to lit performance art that has been regarded as unpredictable. The performance art, that's not our lot, but the paintings, that's something we'll discuss. The Martinovas claim to have made so many paintings, they could fill up an entire catalog, no year's worth of catalog. While the sisters have painted on many subjects, perhaps the most prominent subject has to be these two sisters. They were both modeled off of the Martinovas when they were younger and were usually depicted in paintings that saw doing activities that ranged from something as wholesome as visiting their park to something as explicit as clutching an infant that had been shot. When they were not making art, they were making music. Both had taken singing lessons at 2. Both had self-taught themselves to play the guitar, while Natalie had taught herself to play keyboard. Shortly before leaving high school, the sisters had tried making careers out of their musical abilities, but every avenue was an exit into the road to nowhere. However, the sisters never gave up on music and decided to compose pieces to be played at their exhibitions. This feat would attract the attention of Brigida, Svetlana Gregorova, another duo of sisters with a similar taste in art. One night, the Gregorovas decided to attend one of the Martinovas exhibitions at the suggestion of Ruslanoga, a friend of the two groups of sisters. At the show, the Gregorovas couldn't help but become engrossed in what they were being presented, but perhaps what was turning them on was the music playing during the exhibition. When asked who was composing the music, Slanova told them that the music they were hearing was the work of the Martinovas, and that's when it hit Brigida, the eldest Gregorova, that they should pursue a partnership with the Martinovas. So after the art show wrapped up, Brigida approached the twins and popped the question of pursuing a career with each other, in which they promptly agreed to, and thus the virtual band named Vargasla was born. Its name comes from the first syllable of the surnames of its non-virtual members, which consists of Natalie and Brigida alternating on vocals, the former on guitars and keyboards, the latter on bass Erica and Svetlana on backing vocals, as well as guitars and keyboards respectively, and Run on the drums. The band's name was also led to the frontwoman of the virtual portion of the band, Margaretla Reshirova. Margaretla was portrayed as a timid, yet curious young girl, and was good friends with the Kovakova sisters, a pair of twin sisters that were both named Ellie and Erica. The sister had an extra, both providing backing vocals for the virtual band. Ellie, without an extra, is the virtual band's guitarist and was depicted as outgoing, carefree, and selfless, whilst Ellie with an extra was the drummer of the virtual portion of the band and was portrayed as short-tempered, somewhat delusional, and pretty controlling, especially towards Margaretla, who were portrayed to be romantically attached to each other. The Kopakova sisters were repurposed from the two girls usually depicted in the Martinovas painting.
Margaretla was formed in 1971, 4 years after the Martinovas left college. However, the band mainly released 3 singles and a dozen of fan-made short films within the first 2 years of their life, and didn't release their first album until 1973. Named after the band, the 12-track concept album saw Marglesa and the Kopakova sisters taking a road trip across Slovakia, as the girls reflected on how they got to be and how to trust each other again after the trip nearly leaves the girls at their throats. The album garnered 3 singles, one of which made the top 3 in 5 different European countries, including Marglesa's home in Czechoslovakia. Since then, the band went on to release 10 more albums, with the gross of short films being made to accommodate most of the band's musical output, which by then was being released by Polydor under the watchful supervision of Previously Willard Menville AS, a company set up by the band's members to execute and/or manage all activities of the band, and was based out of Prague in the Gregova's bedroom. Its name comes from 2 rival baking companies in Essex, England that are ironically situated next to each other, and was frequently visited by the Gregova's cousin, a delivery driver that's depicted twice in the company's logo. While we would call this group underappreciated, because we have to hand it to them, this band was pretty innovative not only in their musical style, but also in their visual appearance. They also couldn't match up to the popularity of other acts at the time, so it would be in 1983 when all 5 band members, plus their manager and her sister, left Prague for Berlin, Germany, where Slamova's cousin, Milli Vanilli, and her boyfriend, Emmanuel Camporio, was working with super producer Frank Farian on creating another virtual act. This virtual act, which was called Ryan, a backronym for Rote Yacht Anflug auf Nürnberg, or Red Yacht Approaching Nuremberg, consisted of the band's namesake, the bold yet humble and flippant Ryan, and his girlfriend Brittany, who not only resemble Marglesa by a margin, but also shares many character traits with her, as they traveled Europe on their titular Red Yacht. Its characters were created by Cambrero, with his and Elfmazova's vocals and Farian's producing skills being considered by the 3 the driving force of the characters and their development. One day, Elfmazova would invite Slamova and her bandmates to a demo session, where she and Cambrero spent the day working on the band's theme and at least 2 other songs. Late afternoon, just shortly before 6, Farian would finish mixing the demo to Ryan's theme song, though as everyone listened to the rough mix, Natalie felt something was missing, and had her bandmates follow her into the studio to re-record its instrumentation. Farian loved the girls' take on the song so much that he got the idea to merge Marglesa and Ryan to one big verse, to which both bands agreed to. And so, Marglesa left Polydor for Hansa and merged with Ryan to become Ryan and Brittany with the Kopakova sisters, with Marglesa and Brittany merging into one character and taking on the name of the latter. Likewise, Previously Willard Menville moved its operations from the Gregova's bedroom flat out of Prague to a space in a commercial building overlooking downtown Berlin, and took on the legal moniker Fruit Ostoma Nürnberg Unterhaltung Gibbelstobel Co. KG, though it still did business as Lillard Menville Industries.
Under the combined moniker, the band released 7 albums throughout the 80s, also continuing Margaret's last tradition of producing animated short films out of their musical outfit. All across Europe, their work would be lauded by their target audience of children, as well as the adults of the kids that listen to their music. Also praising the band were the Hacker brothers, the founders of the MTV and merchandising IG. Just months after the company's founding in 1989, the MTV took over the merchandising and licensing division of Lord Menville, with the sole intent of developing the band's first TV show. However, for EMTV, this was easier said than done, as every idea the company had for the band was immediately rejected. Both parties were ready to call it quits when suddenly Andy Copley of Benny Productions comes onto the scene with an executive from NBC. Copley had heard one of the band's songs on a red-eye flight, and after hearing a few more compositions from them, she wondered why not a lot of people were talking about this band in the States. That's when it occurred to Copley. Maybe she could be the one that helped spread more awareness about this band, so she made a proposal for a vehicle for the band and pitched it to numerous broadcasters before presenting the concept to NBC. Executives loved it, and all they needed was the blessing of the band and the MTV. But just how did they respond to it? Well, the MTV wanted something that resembled a something of the lead format, while the band wanted something that tied into the continuity of their work. And after Copley presented to the parties what she had in mind, both felt that it had something for everyone and immediately gave Copley's blessing in doing this show. However, that proposal contained a few changes. Firstly, Copley wanted the band to train in their red mat for a camper since she didn't think a yak was necessary due to the vehicle taking place mainly on American land, and so both the MTV and the band agreed to that. Secondly, Copley suggested that Ryan and Brittany should go from a dating couple to siblings, as after learning about the implied romance between predecessor Brittany and Alan, she felt that a relationship between those two women brought more to the table than a relationship between Brittany and Ryan. And so, for the first time since Margaret's long marriage with Ryan, Brittany and Ellie were now implied intimate partners. This last suggestion did not come from Copley, but instead from that NBC executive. He requested that the band find a way to differentiate the Copacabana sisters from each other to avoid confusing viewers. And after pondering on about it, the band and the MTV decided that Ellie about an extra would remain the same while Ellie was an extra, or would remain Kim. And to further sell this distinction, this new character was given a pink streak in her hair as a reflection of her hot-headed personality, and so began Ryan and Brittany's ascension to the top.
The band's new program made its debut on NBC in July of 1991. Just shortly after it was announced that Ryan and Brittany with the Copacabana sisters would become Ryan and his Dream Girls, mainly because it was also the name of this new program. It was produced by Bay Productions and Film Roman for Lillard Menville Industries and EMTV with MCI, the band's label at the time. For the long run, the program was considered to be a cartoon, though it also utilized live action in its intro and the beginning and end of episodes. The live-action segments were the work of Copley and saw the band getting ready for a performance. Prior to the segment, something would happen that would then prompt Ryan to tell the girls a story that reflected the ongoing situation, thrusting the characters from their live-action world to an animated universe where the main story takes place. Comprising 75% of every 22-minute episode, this portion was the work of Film Roman and saw the band traveling to some part of America in their camper, when a situation that reflected what was happening in the live-action segment arises, forcing the group to put their heads together and figure out how to overcome the situation. Of course, when the group returned to the live-action world, the characters would also use this solution to patch up the conflict that arises at the start of the episode. Throughout each episode, there were 2 songs. For the most part, they were songs made for the program, though remakes of the band's older songs, or in rare instances, cover songs, also made their way to the program. All of the original songs were composed by the band themselves, with help from the show's composer and a frequent collaborator of Copley, Devo frontman Mark Buttersbaugh, and his assistant at the time, Ryan Moore, who provided a few contributions. The first song would be featured in the cartoon portion of the episode, usually in the first segment, though the second segment was also new to contain a song, while the second song was what the live-action band performed at the end of each episode. These 2 songs were different from each other, though it wasn't rare for one song to be performed by both the animated characters and the live-action band. And by the way, for those wondering, yes, the band performed all the songs on the show, even overdubbing the live-action band when they performed. Those songs were pretty much the only contribution the band made to the show, as Mario Lopez, Tiffany Brissett, and Jody Bissett portrayed the band in the live-action segments of the show, while Frank Welker, Cree Summer, and Mary Kay Bregman portrayed them in the animated segments. And in addition to the names mentioned, other people that have appeared on the show include Susan Solovic and John Tesh, who played Allie and Jen's parents both in the live-action and animated segments, with the latter also contributing keyboard keys to the score of the show's earlier episodes. Larry Kenny, who played Lionel, the owner of the place where the band performed, in the live-action segments, and Ranger Bob, a recurring character that typically aided the band on their adventures in the animated portion. Esther Roll, who made a guest appearance in the animated portion of a Christmas episode that saw the group help a character, a choir director, raise money for her annual fundraiser. Mila Kunis, who claimed to have a walk-on role in the animated portion of one episode as a boy that lost his kitty, and Raven, who made a guest appearance in the live-action portion of another episode after the band gives her character a tour of their performing venue, eventually being given the chance to perform with the band at the end.
Now, of course, Brittany and Jen's relationship was initially met with controversy from conservative viewers and media watchdogs, with the American Family Foundation threatening to boycott NBC and then not lay off Brittany an intimate relationship. However, NBC coupled the band and everybody else stood by their decision to portray their relationship as is, and despite the controversy. This decision was lauded by the LGBTQ community and most viewers for its tip of the hat towards the aforementioned community. In fact, it went without saying that the show was pretty much a hit for NBC, with ratings that warranted it the ability to survive the death of NBC started Warner Block, which was replaced by TNBC and Block that mainly consisted of in-house programming geared towards teens. This made the show the only non-animated program to air on the block, one of few scripted programs on the block in which Peter Angel, who produced the bulk of the block's programming, had no involvement in the show, and the first show on the block to be produced independently from NBC. Even though the second season was doing pretty well on NBC, this did not stop tensions from rising between NBC executives and producers. NBC wanted producers to nix the animated segments and focus more on the live-action band, while producers wanted the show to stay as a book. When both parties couldn't come to an accord on how the third season should go, they amicably decided that the second season would be the last season that aired on NBC. After that, the producers inked a deal with Richer Entertainment to produce new seasons of Ryan and His Dream Girls for first-run syndication, and it wasn't just commercial stations that were going to get load of the band, partly due to accepting a $50,000 grant from the Ann Ambler Foundation and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. New episodes of the show also aired on PBS on a second-run basis. This new season debuted in September of 1993, and while it was pretty much the same show that had been airing on NBC for the past 2 years, many changes were made. The changes ranged from being as subtle as pacing to being boisterous as each episode now containing a PA, and I saw the live-action band recap on today's moral freaking community skit, reviewing material that related to their topic, etc. These PAs also included testimonies from people who can preach on that episode's message and concluded with tips from the band on how to take the moral of today's episode to heart. This move was not only to accommodate the program now airing on PBA, but due to the fact that newer episodes were now starting to dabble into themes relevant to today's teen. By the fourth season, the show was now taking a different route, as it dabbled into darker and edgy themes and plotline. To some, it seemed like a breath of fresh air, and to others, this came off as a jumping the shark moment for them. And the fact that this season also saw the debut of a funny animal character that was reviled by every viewer didn't help rename the complaints of those that hated the show's new direction. Despite this, the show was renewed for 2 more seasons and an hour-long special made specifically for video and featuring the live-action band. However, those 2 seasons also marked an era of decline for the Ryan and His Dream Girls franchise due to franchise materials need to unnecessarily fit that aforementioned funny animal sidekick into every detail as possible, as well as the cartoon itself beginning to pump out episodes that were considered by many to be too ambitious. Eventually, it would relieve itself of its misery when Richer announced that the 6th season of Ryan and His Dream Girls would be the last. The 6th season concluded in May of 1997, and after spending the subsequent summer in the rooms, Richer swiftly took the show off all commercial stations, with PBS stations slowly following suit in 1999 following the rebrand of the network's children's club. The last known PBS airing of this show occurred in 2017 in WFWN in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and had been seldom airing the show since 2008, wearing a special Christmas episode in its original broadcast form. After that, the show has never seen a television rerun, nor has it been released on home media or any type of streaming service. The closest the 1991 series has gotten to being rerun was in 2014 when CBS, the current distributors of the program and Richer's television library, tried to negotiate a deal with the Hub Network to their lineup. Unfortunately, these negotiations came just around the time the Hub began the process of becoming Discovered Family, and by the time new management took over, the cable channel lost interest in running the program. And so that's where the story of our 1991 program sits, with an obscure reputation, though there have been 2 times when there was renewed interest in Ryan and His Dream Girls, as David will explain.
Right. So a year after the 1991 TV series concluded, Richer reached out to the Polone Weiner Company on creating a made-for-TV movie that featured Ryan, Brittany, and the twins as full-grown adults pursuing careers, real relationships, and the like. Made as an attempt to ride on the success of the Lifetime Network and the movies that it frequently showed, this movie was set to debut on NBC after producers had patched things up with executives. Most, if not all, of the cast and crew that worked on the live-action segments of the 1991 series returned to work on this movie. Though the only key character that was missing was that funny animal sidekick. thankfully, with the movie explaining that he was killed by a speeding truck. Adam Levine of Maroon 5 is also alleged to have a bit role in this movie, though this is yet to be confirmed. Now, because of the nature of the movie, there were a lot of status quo breaking moments, with the biggest one involving Joe and Brittany, who have now become an official couple, as it would mark the first time the latter stepped to the former, who had now taken on the role of the abusive partner frequently found in those aforementioned Lifetime movies. Now you're probably wondering, what do you mean by what if? Well, this movie was initially set to air on NBC in August of 1998, but for no given reason, it was pushed back by 2 months. But when the week that movie was supposed to debut approached, its premiere was pushed back by another month. This continued into the end of the television series when NBC lost interest in airing the movie. Adding insult to injury, no other network, not even Lifetime themselves, expressed interest in airing the movie. EMTV tried to pitch the movie to the Hallmark Channel just months after it had taken a stake in Crown Media, but executives weren't very crazy over the movie's premise. Today, the master copy of this movie sits in the library of Buying Alternate Investments, the current owners of Reicher's catalog. This next attempt at bringing awareness to Ryan or Dreamgirls in the 21st century was also forgotten, though much more successful than the TV movie. It was an animated series that pretty much picks up where the last season left off, even though some of the continuity had been changed, so there's no need to describe this too much. It was a Canadian, German, French, Australian co-production produced by Energy Entertainment of Sydney, Image Entertainment Corporation Montreal, and Marathon Media of Suburban Paris for Lillard Menville Industries, which had become a joint venture between co-production partners EMTV and BMG Music, the distributors of the band's music at the time, in 2000. Also joining in were its Canadian broadcasters, which included CBC, Tele-Quebec, TVO and former sister channel TFO, Family Channel and its former sister channel, Frac TV, Knowledge Network, SCN and Access. Then you have RTV Family Entertainment of Munich, German public broadcaster ZDF and its commercial outlet, ZDF Enterprises, followed by its French partners, which include Disney Animation France, TF1, Teletoon and, not that Teletoon, this Teletoon. Plus, you have 9 Network Australia and Hit Entertainment of London, which worked with RTV in distributing the program worldwide, but Germany, where that job was being handled by RTV and CDF Enterprises, and France, where that responsibility fell under Marathon's aegis. Compared to the 1991 series, none of the cast from that series, obviously, returned for this series, as they were replaced by standard Canadian voice talent, with Shailene Woody and a young Jenna Marbles, the respective voices of Allie and Jen, being the only notable voice actors on the series. In addition, instead of a bookending live-action segment and 2 original songs every episode, each episode was roughly 2 50-minute segments with original songs rarely being featured, and compared to even the NBC-era episodes of the program, the series was pretty denser and wackier in its presentation. And did we mention Red Yacht returns for this cartoon? But anyway, this series ran for 2 seasons in 2003 and 2004 before being quietly canned by an unknown constituent. Much like the 1981 series, this cartoon was seldomly, if ever, reran on television and lacked home media releases, though according to Marcy's research, those that saw the show remembered it as banal, boring, and because the series made the funny animal mascot's character 10 times worse than the 1991's take on the character, unbearable to watch. In the States, the only way you could watch this show was through the Kids Unlimited on-demand service in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and that's it. This show has never been shown on American terrestrial television, and it's never been shown on American cable television. And considering its circumstances, it is highly unlikely this show will ever see the light of day on any type of American channel.
Now you're probably thinking to yourselves, Ryan and his Dreamgirls had to have disbanded. Well, that's where you're wrong. While their last album was released in 2011, with their latest single being released a year prior, the band continues to perform together and release new animated shorts. However, they've been pretty much regulated to Germanic Europe and the surrounding countries. Though even over there, not a lot of people born after their last album know who they are, as the band has pretty much restricted themselves to smaller videos since then. Even their non-virtual members have led extremely private lives since then. The only info Marcy was able to get about what these members are doing as of today was from Svetlana Gregorova, who had since passed in 2013 from a long battle with cancer. Ratsilova had taken her own life in 2016 in a halfway house following an intense struggle with her mental health. And Naomi Martinova, who announced in April that she was working on a feature film based on the band, mainly in response to the Chip and Dan film released the previous year. So given the circumstances, you're probably wondering how did they fall under a rather, well, visit.
I feel like she's just completely manipulated you into feeling like you deserve this.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I actually give people a chance and I don't just break up with them because they make me come once.
Okay.
This is Unaware, a short film made for BuzzFeed by contributor Brittany Ashley, who claimed to have been a fanatic of the 1991 program. The short saw the gang, as adults, traveling to a beach house for a getaway. Unfortunately, things don't go as planned when the two couples get into slight arguments. For Ryan and Ellie, it's no problem since they make up afterward. But for Jen and Brittany, the arguments then become abusive. The reality.
She's abusive.
She's never hit me.
She doesn't have to.
Although meant as a parody, Unaware takes its subject of being abused seriously and is presented almost like a single-camera drama. And because this is a parody, some continuity had been disregarded for a slightly new one, almost reminiscent of the plotline to the unreleased 1998 Community, and that funny animal we've been bitching about gone. But regardless, Unaware was lauded by many for its tight grasp on the subject of spousal abuse and the performances of its four actor cast, with others further enjoying the fact that it provokingly proved that lesbian relationships can be just as unhealthy as straight relationships. Though others couldn't help but take the movie's message and irony, as around the time this short was released, BuzzFeed would terminate Brittany for playing a big part in a non-BuzzFeed production, which led some to liken Brittany's relationship with BuzzFeed with the abusive relationship portrayed in this movie. But anyway you slice it, Unaware was considered by many to be one of BuzzFeed's finest works yet. And that's something even we can preach about. After I watched the movie in its entirety, I sent this over to Marcy in the hopes of digging deep into this movie's origin, and as you just saw, she totally delivered. Unfortunately, though, this is where the story ends. How obscure do you think this problem is dated?
Well, that 1998 movie, no chance of being uncovered. But the two shows we spoke about, unless someone came across a video of both shows, either a commercial release or homemade recording, or Studio 100, or in the 1991 program's case, CBS for North American audiences, inked a deal with a streaming service and or a television channel to add these programs to the rosters, then I believe that those two programs are as good as found. Until then, we'll have to leave it on the conclusion that they are lost. Well, who would have known something like a BuzzFeed video would end up here? But anyway, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe to us, which you can do by clicking on the icon in the middle. Or, if you want to look around a bit, perhaps the two videos surrounding the icon might help you out a bit. And be sure to donate to us on our Ko-fi page. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you with another video.